The summer heat pressed down on Forest Lawn Memorial Park like a heavy blanket. Dr. Sarah Chen wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stood outside the sealed gates of the great mausoleum, clutching a leather folder that contained documents she never thought she would see. Documents that would change everything the world believed about Michael Jackson. Her hands trembled, not from the California sun, but from the weight of what she was about to uncover. Sarah was a forensic archaeologist, someone who spent her career digging through history to find truth buried beneath layers of time and secrecy. She had worked on cases involving ancient pharaohs and medieval kings, but nothing prepared her for this moment. 3 weeks earlier, she received an anonymous package at her university office. Inside was a single USB drive and a handwritten note that read, "The truth about the King of Pop is not what they told you. Look deeper." At first, she thought it was a cruel joke, another conspiracy theory from someone with too much time on their hands. But the files on that drive contained medical records, legal documents, and photographs that made her blood run cold. The documents revealed inconsistencies in the official reports from June 2009, autopsy measurements that did not match previous medical records, dental charts that showed variations no expert could explain, toxicology reports with signatures from doctors who claimed they never signed them. Sarah spent sleepless nights cross-referencing every detail, reaching out to contacts in law enforcement and medical examination offices. Each conversation led to more questions. Each answer opened another door to something darker, something deliberately hidden. When she finally gathered enough evidence to present to the authorities, they listened with stone faces and told her they would investigate. But days turned into weeks, and nothing happened. Phone calls went unreturned. Emails vanished into digital voids. That was when she realized something truly sinister was at play. Powerful people did not want this information to surface. They had spent years building a narrative, and she was threatening to tear it down. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A former security guard at Forest Lawn contacted her through an encrypted email service. He had worked at the memorial park during the burial and witnessed something that haunted him for years. He described discrepancies in the burial procedures, unusual security measures that went beyond protecting celebrities' grave, and conversations between officials that suggested they were hiding something monumental. He agreed to help her gain access to the mausoleum, but only under the cover of darkness when fewer eyes were watching. Now she stood at the threshold of truth, waiting for the guard to arrive with the keys that would unlock more than just a door. Her career could end tonight. She could be arrested for trespassing, for disturbing the grave, for violating the sanctity of death itself. But she thought about Michael Jackson, the man who brought joy to millions, whose voice echoed across generations, whose life was scrutinized under the harshest lights. He deserved the truth. The world deserved the truth. Footsteps echoed behind her. Marcus, the security guard, appeared from the shadows. His face was drawn, his eyes darting nervously across the empty parking lot. He was risking everything, too. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded, unable to find words adequate for the moment. Marcus pulled out a ring of keys, his hand shaking so badly that it took 3 attempts to find the right one. The lock clicked open with a sound that seemed to reverberate through the entire cemetery. Inside, the mausoleum was a cathedral of silence. Marble walls rose toward vaulted ceilings, and the air smelled of flowers and something else, something chemical that preservation required. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating names carved in stone, dates marking lives lived and lost. They walked deeper into the building, past crypts of Hollywood legends and industry titans, until they reached a section that housed the most famous resident of all. Michael Jackson's name gleamed on the marble facing, polished to perfection, adorned with flowers that were replaced daily by devoted fans who were never allowed to see exactly where their idol rested. Security cameras covered every angle, but Marcus had disabled them for a 30-minute window. 30 minutes to uncover a secret that had been protected for over a decade. Sarah placed her hand on the cold marble, feeling the smooth surface beneath her palm. Behind this wall lay answers that would shake the foundations of popular culture, that would force everyone to question what they thought they knew about fame, death, and the price of being the most recognizable person on earth. Marcus produced a small toolkit. The marble facing was not sealed permanently. It was designed to be open for maintenance, though few people knew this fact. As he carefully worked on the mechanisms, Sarah's mind raced through everything that led to this moment. The inconsistencies in witness statements from the day Michael died, the rushed burial that kept even family members at a distance, the sealed autopsy reports that contradicted each other, the strange behavior of the estate executors who seemed more interested in protecting a brand than honoring a man, the marble facing loosened with a grinding sound that made Sarah's heart leap into her throat. Marcus pulled it away, revealing the vault beyond. Sarah aimed her flashlight into the opening, her breath catching in her throat. What she saw made her knees buckle. The vault was there, exactly as it should be. But something was wrong. Something was terribly, impossibly wrong. Sarah's flashlight beam trembled as it illuminated the interior of the vault. The bronze casket sat exactly where it should be, gleaming under the harsh lead light, but there was something beside it that should not exist. A metal briefcase, modern and completely out of place in this sacred space, rested against the side of the casket. It was secured with a combination lock, and attached to its handle was a laminated card with typed instructions, for the one who seeks the truth. The combination is the date the world changed forever. Sarah's mind immediately went to June 25th, 2009, the day Michael Jackson died. Her fingers worked the lock, 062509. The briefcase clicked open. Inside were 3 items that would rewrite history. The first was a video camera, an older model but still functional, with a tape inside marked "Play Me First." The second was a thick manila envelope sealed with red wax, stamped with what looked like a legal firm's insignia she did not recognize. The third was a burner phone, charged and ready, with a single number programmed into its contacts labeled "When You Know." Sarah's hand shook as she pulled out the video camera. Marcus positioned his flashlight to give her better visibility. She pressed play. The screen flickered to life, and Michael Jackson's face appeared. Not the Michael Jackson from the final years, gaunt and tired, but a healthier version, perhaps from several years before his death. He sat in what looked like a recording studio, wearing a simple black shirt, his eyes clear and focused directly into the camera. When he spoke, his voice was steady, deliberate, nothing like the soft-spoken whisper the public knew. "If you are watching this, then I am gone, and someone finally cared enough to look beyond the lies. My name is Michael Joseph Jackson, and I need to tell you what really happened, because the story they told you is not the truth. I am going to explain why I had to disappear, why I had to let the world believe I died, and what I discovered that made living as Michael Jackson impossible." Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Marcus grabbed her arm to steady her, his face pale in the flashlight's glow. They watched, transfixed, as Michael continued speaking. He explained that in the years leading up to his supposed death, he had uncovered a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of the entertainment industry, involving exploitation, trafficking, and crimes so heinous that speaking about them publicly would have meant certain death. He had gathered evidence, documenting everything he discovered, planning to expose the perpetrators. But the more he learned, the more dangerous his position became. Michael described receiving threats against his children, against his family, against anyone he loved. Men in expensive suits visited him in the middle of the night, making it clear that his fame would not protect him. They told him he had 2 choices: remain silent and continue being a cash machine for their operations, or face consequences that would destroy not just him but everyone connected to him. He was trapped in a golden cage, a prisoner of his own celebrity, unable to escape without risking the lives of innocent people. That was when he devised the plan. He would fake his own death, creating an exit strategy so elaborate that even those hunting him would believe he was gone. It required the cooperation of a few trusted individuals, people who understood the stakes and were willing to risk everything. His personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, was not part of the conspiracy to kill him. Murray was a scapegoat, the fall guy, someone who would take the blame while Michael disappeared. The real conspirators wanted it that way, wanted someone to punish, wanted the public to believe justice had been served. Michael explained how they staged everything. A body double, someone with similar features who had died from natural causes, was prepared for the autopsy. The dental records were switched. The medical reports were falsified with the help of corrupted officials who were either paid handsomely or threatened into compliance. The burial at Forest Lawn was a performance, a final show for the public and for those who wanted him dead. Everyone needed to believe Michael Jackson was truly gone. The video showed Michael's eyes filling with tears as he talked about leaving his children. That was the hardest part. He said, they could not know the truth, not initially. It was too dangerous. If they believed he was dead, they would be safe. His mother, his family, they all had to believe the lie. The pain in his voice was raw, genuine, the sound of a man torn between survival and love. He promised that one day, when it was safe, when the people responsible were brought to justice, he would find a way to let his children know. But until then, he had to be a ghost, a memory, a legend that lived only in music and photographs. Sarah paused the video, needing a moment to process what she had just witnessed. Marcus was breathing heavily, his back against the wall, staring at the casket with new understanding. "If this is real," he whispered, "then who is in there?" Sarah did not want to think about that answer. She picked up the manila envelope and carefully broke the wax seal. Inside were documents that supported everything Michael claimed. Photographs of men in powerful positions engaged in activities that would end their careers and their freedom. Financial records showing money laundering through entertainment companies. Testimony from victims who were silenced with settlements and threats. List of names. Some she recognized as titans of the industry, others unknown but annotated with positions of authority. One document stood out. It was a contract, dated 3 months before Michael's supposed death, between him and a private security firm that specialized in witness protection. The contract outlined a complete identity change, relocation to an undisclosed location, and ongoing security measures to ensure his safety. The signatures were notarized, legal, binding. This was not a fantasy. This was a carefully executed plan. Sarah returned to the video camera and pressed play again. Michael was now standing, pacing slightly, his agitation visible. "I know this sounds impossible," he said. "I know people will call this a hoax, another conspiracy theory. But I have left evidence, real evidence, that can be verified. The briefcase contains coordinates to a safety deposit box in Geneva. Inside that box is more documentation, video testimony from others who were part of this conspiracy, and instructions for how to expose everything without getting killed in the process. I am trusting that whoever finds this has the courage to see it through. The world needs to know what happens in the shadows. The children need to be protected. The monsters need to be stopped." Dawn broke over Los Angeles as Sarah sat in her car outside the Memorial Park, the briefcase on the passenger seat, her mind racing through impossible decisions. She had documented everything with her phone, taking photographs and videos of the evidence before Marcus resealed the vault. They had parted ways with an agreement to stay silent until she decided what to do next, but silence felt like betrayal. Every moment she waited was a moment the truth remained buried. Yet rushing forward without a plan could get her killed, or worse, could bury the evidence forever. She drove to her apartment, constantly checking her rearview mirror for signs of being followed. The streets of Los Angeles were waking up, people heading to work, living their normal lives, completely unaware that everything they believed about one of the world's most famous deaths was a carefully constructed lie. She thought about Michael's children, now adults, living with the grief of losing their father. She thought about fans around the world who mourned him, who visited his grave, who kept his memory alive. What would this revelation do to them? Inside her apartment, Sarah locked every door and window before allowing herself to examine the contents of the briefcase more closely. The burner phone sat on her coffee table like a dangerous artifact. Should she call the number? Who was on the other end? Michael had said, "when you know," suggesting that the person waiting for that call was part of his network, someone who could help navigate what came next. But it could also be a trap. The people Michael had been hiding from were still out there, still powerful, still dangerous. She decided to start with the coordinates. Using her computer and specialized software, she traced the location to a private banking institution in Geneva, Switzerland. The safety deposit box number was included in the documents, along with a passphrase for access. "The truth shall make you free, but first it will make you miserable." It was quintessentially Michael, mixing hope with the harsh reality of what truth-seeking demanded. She booked a flight for the next day, using cash she had been saving for emergencies. This certainly qualified. Before she could leave the country, Sarah needed to secure the evidence. She made encrypted copies of everything, storing them on multiple drives, and sent packages to 3 trusted colleagues with instructions to open them only if something happened to her. She wrote detailed letters explaining what she had found, where to look for more information, and who to contact. If this went wrong, if she disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances, the truth would still have a chance to emerge. The flight to Geneva was torture. Every passenger looked suspicious. Every glance felt like surveillance. Sarah barely slept, running through scenarios in her mind, trying to prepare for every possibility. She had dedicated a career to uncovering truth, but this was different. This was not ancient history. This involved living people with power, money, and motivation to keep secrets buried. When the plane landed, she moved through customs with her heart pounding, expecting security to pull her aside, to search her bags, to find the copied documents hidden in her luggage. But nothing happened. She passed through smoothly, just another tourist visiting Switzerland. The bank was located in a quiet district, a building that radiated discretion and old money. Sarah presented the documentation, spoke the passphrase, and was escorted to a private viewing room. The bank official returned with a large metal box, placed it on the table, and left her alone. Sarah lifted the lid with trembling hands. Inside were treasures that would rock the world. More video recordings, these featuring testimonies from other victims, people who had escaped the same networks Michael had discovered. Their faces were obscured, their voices altered, but their stories were consistent, corroborating everything Michael had claimed. There were also personal items. A letter addressed to my children, sealed and waiting. Photographs of Michael in his new life, showing him healthy, older, living somewhere tropical with brilliant blue water visible in the background. He looked peaceful in these images, finally free from the burden of fame. But there was sadness in his eyes, too, the sadness of a man separated from everything he loved. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she looked at these photographs, understanding the magnitude of his sacrifice. The most damning evidence was a ledger meticulously maintained, showing financial transactions between entertainment executives, politicians, and international criminal networks. The money trail was clear, undeniable, linking legitimate businesses to illegal operations. Names jumped out at her, people she had seen on television, people whose movies she had watched, people who were celebrated as pillars of the industry. The evidence showed there were monsters hiding behind glamour and success. Sarah spent hours in that room, documenting everything, understanding the full scope of what Michael had uncovered. This was not just about one man faking his death. This was about systemic corruption, about an industry built on exploitation, about powerful people who believed they were untouchable. Michael had been one of the few with enough fame and resources to fight back, and even he had to disappear to survive. When she finally left the bank, she knew what had to be done. She could not go to the police, not when the corruption reached into law enforcement. She could not trust traditional media, not when they were controlled by the same people Michael had been running from. She needed to reach the public directly, to release the information in a way that could not be suppressed or dismissed. She thought about the burner phone. It was time to make the call. Sarah found a quiet park bench and dialed the number. It rang 3 times before someone answered. "You found it," a voice said, calm and measured. "I have been waiting a long time for this call." The voice was unfamiliar, neither male nor female in its digital distortion. "Who are you?" Sarah asked. "I am someone who has been protecting Michael's evidence, making sure it survives until the right person came along. You are Dr. Sarah Chen, forensic archaeologist, known for your integrity and your commitment to truth. Michael would be pleased." "Is he still alive?" Sarah asked, the question burning in her throat. There was a long pause. "That is not a question I can answer directly, but I can tell you that what you do next will determine whether his sacrifice meant something. You have the evidence. You have the power to expose everything. But you need to be smart about it. These people will come for you. They will try to discredit you, to destroy you, to make sure this information never sees the light of day." The voice guided her through the next steps. She would need to coordinate simultaneous releases across multiple platforms, ensuring that no single entity could suppress the information. She would need to contact journalists who had proven themselves independent, who had taken on powerful interests before. She would need to protect herself, moving to a secure location while the storm broke. Michael left resources for this moment. The voice continued. "Money to fund your protection. Contact to help you navigate what comes next." He planned for everything. Sarah spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the release that would change everything. She worked with a team of investigative journalists from 5 different countries, people who had built their careers exposing corruption and who understood the risks involved. They verified every piece of evidence, cross-referenced every claim, interviewed additional sources who could corroborate the testimonies. The more they dug, the more convinced they became that Michael Jackson's story was not only true but even more extensive than his video suggested. The investigation revealed a network that spanned decades, involving not just entertainment industry figures but also bankers, lawyers, and politicians who had worked together to maintain a system of exploitation. Michael had been uniquely positioned to discover this network because of his fame, his access to exclusive circles, and his genuine concern for children that made him notice things others ignored. When he started asking questions, when he started documenting what he saw, he became a target. The evidence showed that in the months before his supposed death, Michael had been in contact with FBI agents who were conducting their own investigation into trafficking networks. But those agents had been reassigned, their investigation shut down by officials higher up the chain. Michael realized then that the corruption reached into government itself, that there was no institution he could trust to protect him. The only option was to disappear so completely that even his enemies would stop looking. Dr. Chen coordinated with her journalist partners to plan the release. They would publish simultaneously across multiple platforms, established newspapers, online media outlets, documentary filmmakers, and social media channels. The evidence would be released in waves, starting with the most verifiable facts and building toward the more shocking revelations. They anticipated denial, attacks on credibility, attempts to bury the story. But the sheer volume of evidence and the coordination of the release would make suppression nearly impossible. The day before the planned release, Sarah received a visitor at the secure apartment where she had been staying in Berlin. A woman in her 60s, elegantly dressed, with kind eyes that held deep sadness. She introduced herself as Catherine Jackson, Michael's mother. Sarah's heart nearly stopped. How had she found her? Was this a trap? But Catherine's tears were genuine as she embraced Sarah like a daughter. "I always knew something was wrong," Catherine whispered. "The way they rushed everything, the way they kept me away from my son, the way nothing made sense. But I was grieving, and they told me it would condition his memory to ask questions. Now I know the truth." Catherine explained that she had been contacted by the same mysterious voice that had guided Sarah, informed that the revelation was coming, and given the choice to meet the woman who was about to tell the world that her son might still be alive. "I do not know if I will ever see him again," Catherine said, her voice breaking. "But I need the world to know why he did this. I need people to understand that my son was not strange, was not a criminal, was not the monster they tried to make him. He was a protector. He was fighting evil, and it cost him everything." Catherine provided one more piece of the puzzle. She gave Sarah a letter that Michael had left with his attorney years ago, to be delivered to his mother only when the truth emerges. In it, Michael apologized for the pain his disappearance caused, explained his deep love for his family, and asked for forgiveness. He wrote about watching his children grow up through secret means, unable to contact them but never truly absent. He described the agony of being dead to the people who mattered most while living in a prison of anonymity. The letter contained something else, a date and a location. Michael wrote that if the evidence ever came to light, if someone had the courage to expose what he had discovered, he would appear at that location on that date. It was his promise, his way of proving that everything was real. The date was 2 months away. The location was the Apollo Theater in Harlem, the place where he had performed as a child with his brothers, where his dreams had first taken flight. Sarah and her team decided to include Catherine's testimony in the release. Her presence, her pain, her validation would make the story impossible to dismiss as conspiracy theory. They filmed an interview where Catherine spoke directly to the camera, looking into the lens as if she could see Michael watching. "I know you had to leave us," she said, tears flowing freely. "I know you were protecting us. I understand now. And I want you to know that I love you, that your children love you, that the world needs to know what you sacrificed." The release began at midnight Greenwich Mean Time on a Thursday. Within minutes, the internet exploded. The documents appeared simultaneously on investigative journalism websites across 6 continents. Major newspapers ran front-page stories. Television networks scrambled to cover the breaking news. Social media platforms lit up with reactions ranging from shock to disbelief to anger. The evidence was too substantial to ignore, too well documented to easily dismiss. The backlash came swiftly. People named in the documents issued immediate denials. Lawyers filed emergency injunctions trying to suppress publication. Public relations firms worked overtime to discredit the sources. But the genie was out of the bottle. Millions of people were downloading the documents, watching the videos, examining the evidence for themselves. The conversation could not be stopped. Some of Michael's family members issued statements supporting the revelation. His daughter Paris spoke publicly for the first time about the inconsistencies she had noticed over the years, the questions she had been afraid to ask. His brother Jermaine confirmed that Michael had seemed increasingly paranoid in his final years, talking about people watching him, people who wanted to control him. These testimonies from those closest to him added credibility to the explosive claims. Within 72 hours, authorities in multiple countries announced investigations into the individuals named in the documents. Several executives resigned from their positions. Stock prices of entertainment companies plummeted. The industry that had seemed untouchable was suddenly under the brightest spotlight, forced to answer questions it had avoided for decades. Sarah watched the chaos unfold from a secure location, knowing that she had succeeded in what Michael had hoped for, but also knowing that the danger was far from over. She received threatening messages, phone calls promising violence, emails detailing her movements in ways that proved she was being surveilled. But she also received messages of support from victims who had never found the courage to speak up, from people who had witnessed corruption but felt powerless to fight it. Michael's story had opened a door, had given others permission to tell their truths. 2 months passed in a whirlwind of hearings, arrests, revelations, and societal reckoning. The entertainment industry faced its most significant crisis in history. Criminal investigations expanded across multiple countries. Victims came forward in unprecedented numbers, empowered by Michael's evidence and the public attention it generated. The systems that had protected predators for decades were finally collapsing. But one question remained unanswered. Was Michael Jackson truly alive, and would he appear as his letter had promised? Sarah stood outside the Apollo Theater on the designated date, surrounded by thousands of people who had gathered hoping to witness something impossible. News helicopters circled overhead. Police had established barricades to manage the crowds. Media outlets from every corner of the globe sent their top reporters. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation, skepticism, hope, and fear. Some people held signs professing their undying belief that Michael lived. Others came simply because they needed closure, needed to know if the man they had mourned was really gone. Katherine Jackson sat in the front row inside the theater, her hands clasped in prayer. Michael's children were there too, Paris, Prince, and Blanket, now adults, their faces showing the complex emotions of people who might be about to see their father for the first time in over a decade. They had lived their entire adult lives with his absence, had built their identities around being the children of a legend who died too young. What would it mean if he walked through those doors? The appointed time came and passed. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. The crowd grew restless. Skeptics began to murmur that this was exactly what they expected, a hoax, a publicity stunt, proof that the whole story was fabricated. Sarah felt her stomach sink. Had she been wrong? Had someone manipulated her, used her to spread an elaborate lie? The evidence had been real, the documents verified, but what if the final piece, the promise of Michael's return, was false? Then the lights dimmed. A single spotlight illuminated the center of the stage. From the wings, a figure emerged. He walked slowly, deliberately, each step measured and careful. He wore simple clothes, jeans, and a black shirt, no elaborate costume or theatrical makeup. His hair was natural, gray at the temples, his face showing the years that had passed. But the eyes were unmistakable. The way he moved, even without music, was unmistakable. The energy that radiated from him was unmistakable. Michael Jackson stood at the center of the Apollo stage and removed his sunglasses. The theater erupted in screams, sobs, and gasps of disbelief. Katherine collapsed into the arms of her grandchildren, overcome with emotion. Paris was crying so hard she could barely stand. Prince held her up, his own face wet with tears. Blanket stared at the figure on stage as if seeing a ghost, which in a way he was. Michael stood silently, letting people process what they were seeing, giving the world a moment to understand that the impossible had happened. Then he spoke, his voice filling the theater with that familiar timbre that had been silenced for so long. "My name is Michael Joseph Jackson," he began. "I know I have been dead to you for many years. I know my absence caused pain that I can never fully repair. But I need you to understand that every day I was gone, I thought about you. Every day I was in hiding, I mourned the life I had to leave behind. I made the hardest choice anyone can make because staying meant endangering everyone I loved." He explained everything, confirming what the documents had revealed, adding details that only he could provide. He spoke about the people he had been running from, many of whom were now facing justice. He talked about living in anonymity, watching his children grow through photographs and secretly recorded videos, celebrating their achievements from the shadows. He described the agony of being alive but dead to the world, the torture of hearing people mourn him while being unable to comfort them. Michael addressed his children directly, walking to the edge of the stage. "Paris, Prince, Blanket, you were babies when I had to leave. You do not really know me as a father, only as a memory. I understand if you are angry, if you hate me for abandoning you. I understand if you cannot forgive this. But I want you to know that leaving you was not a choice I made lightly. I left because staying would have gotten you killed. The people I was fighting against threatened your lives. I chose my absence over your safety because there was no other option." Paris stood up, her legs shaking, and walked toward the stage. Security moved to stop her, but Michael waved them away. She climbed the steps and stood facing the man who claimed to be her father. She studied his face, looking for proof, for something that would confirm what her heart wanted to believe. "Tell me something only my father would know," she demanded, her voice breaking. "Tell me something private, something that proves you are really him." Michael smiled, a sad, tender smile. "You used to have nightmares about being chased by shadows. You would come to my room in the middle of the night, and I would make shadow puppets on the wall until you laughed. Your favorite was the rabbit that would hop across the ceiling. You called him Mr. Whiskers, and you made me promise that Mr. Whiskers would always protect you from the bad shadows." Paris collapsed into his arms, sobbing. "Daddy," she whispered, the word she had not spoken in years. "Daddy, I miss you so much." They held each other while the world watched, a moment of reunion so powerful that even the skeptics in the audience felt their doubts crumbling. This was real. Michael Jackson had returned. The days following the Apollo Theater appearance were unprecedented. Michael held a press conference where he answered questions for 5 hours straight, providing evidence, explaining his decisions, expressing remorse for the pain his choice caused while defending its necessity. He announced that he would cooperate fully with ongoing investigations, would testify against the people he had been hiding from, and would use his platform to push for reforms that would prevent future exploitation. Michael also announced his retirement from public performance. He had no interest in reclaiming his throne as the king of pop. That life, that identity, had been a cage disguised as a crown. Instead, he would focus on advocacy, on using his experience to help others escape dangerous situations, on fighting the system that had forced him into hiding. He established a foundation dedicated to protecting vulnerable people in the entertainment industry, funded by the royalties from his music that had continued to generate revenue even in his supposed death. For Sarah Chen, the revelation brought both vindication and complexity. She had helped expose one of the most significant conspiracies in modern history, but she also grappled with questions about her role. Had she done the right thing? Had forcing Michael out of hiding put him in danger? Would the people he testified against find ways to exact revenge? These questions kept her awake at night, even as she received accolades for her investigative work. Michael addressed these concerns when he met with Sarah privately. They sat in a quiet room away from cameras and crowds, just two people who had become unlikely partners in revealing truth. "You did not force me into anything," Michael assured her. "I left that evidence hoping someone exactly like you would find it. I could not hide forever. My children deserve to know their father. The victims deserve justice. You gave me the opportunity to make my sacrifice mean something. For that, I will be forever grateful." As months passed, the world adjusted to a new reality. Michael Jackson was alive. The entertainment industry was facing unprecedented reform, and conversations about power, exploitation, and accountability dominated public discourse. Some people struggled to forgive Michael for the deception, arguing that he could have fought differently, that his choice to disappear was cowardice disguised as protection. Others saw him as a hero who made the ultimate sacrifice to protect his children and expose evil. Michael did not concern himself with public opinion. He had spent his entire life under the scrutiny of millions, his every move analyzed, criticized, celebrated, and condemned. Now he focused on what mattered, rebuilding relationships with his children, supporting his mother through the complicated emotions his return created, and working to ensure that what he had endured would never happen to others. He lived quietly, appearing in public only when necessary for his advocacy work, content to be a man rather than an icon. The grave at Forest Lawn remained, now a monument not to death but to the extremes a person might go to protect those they love. Fans still visited, leaving flowers and messages, but now they left them with different emotions. Not grief for a life lost too soon, but respect for a sacrifice that changed the world. The nameplate was supplemented with a new inscription: "Here lies a decoy for the devil. May truth always find a way to light." Michael Jackson had died and been reborn, not in the spiritual sense that his music suggested, but in a literal way that proved sometimes the only way to survive monsters is to make them believe they have won. His story became a testament to the complexity of heroism, to the reality that doing the right thing sometimes means making choices that look like betrayal, sound like madness, and feel like death. But in the end, truth emerged from the darkness, and with it came the possibility of healing, justice, and perhaps redemption.